Your dog will never forget one thing about you. And it is not a command, not a trick, not the sound of the treat bag. Researchers in the Department of Ethology at Eötvös Loránd University in Budapest found that your dog holds an actual memory of you, the ordinary, specific you. Now, most owners call that burst of joy at the door a reflex, a simply trained loop. The door opens, you appear, the tail starts to move, and that part is real. Your dog truly does learn the world that way. But it is not only a reflex. It is not only your scent reaching the hallway a moment before you do. What your dog is keeping is quieter than that, and far stranger. They keep the parts of you that were never meant to be remembered at all. So the real question tonight is not whether your dog remembers you. It is what, exactly, out of all of you, they will never let go of. Start with the version of your dog you already believe in. Most of us are taught that a dog runs on conditioning. A cue comes in, a response goes out, a reward lands, and the loop tightens. The leash means a walk. The can opener means dinner. Keys in the lock mean you are finally home. And all of that is true. Your dog really does learn the world this way. But here is what conditioning cannot explain. It cannot explain why your dog remembers things that never came with a reward at all. The afternoon you sat down on the kitchen floor and cried, and they crossed the room and pressed their whole weight against your side. The exact way you lace up your shoes before a run. That one friend of yours they warmed to, out of the dozens they met just once. None of that paid off for them. Nothing about it should have stuck. A reflex is a prediction machine. It exists to tell your dog what happens next. Leash, then walk. Bowl, then food. But a reflex has no room for what already happened. It cannot hold a moment for its own sake. And yet your dog does exactly that, every single day, with no one teaching them how. Think about that for a second. Something inside them is quietly saving the parts of you that were never supposed to matter. So a group of researchers built a test to catch it in the act. The method is called Do As I Do, and it is beautifully simple. First, dogs learn to copy a person. Someone touches a chair, says do it, and the dog touches the chair. Someone turns in a circle, says do it, and the dog turns in a circle. So far, this is only an imitation. This is still a loop you could fairly call training. Then the scientists did something sneaky. They let the dog watch a person perform an action. And instead of asking the dog to copy it, they asked the dog to lie down. And again. And again. Until the dog was completely convinced that the whole game now was simply to lie down. The memory of that human action seemed pointless. It led nowhere. It earned nothing. And then, with no warning at all, the researcher said, "Do it. Do the thing you saw." Not the thing we have been drilling for the last few minutes. The thing from before. And the dogs did. They reached back and reproduced an action they had no reason to be storing, at a moment they had no reason to expect. 17 dogs, tested 1 minute later, then tested a full hour later, and they could still call it back. And remember, the surprise was the whole point. If the dogs had known a test was coming, you could argue they were simply told to pay attention. But nobody told them. That action mattered to no one in the room, least of all the dog, and it stayed anyway. Which means the moments your dog keeps of you are almost never the ones you would choose. Not the big walk, not the trip to the lake. It is the ordinary Tuesday you have already forgotten. The way you set your keys down, the song you hummed at the sink. Here is why that lands so close to home. Your dog is not only recording what pays off. Your dog is quietly keeping a record of what you did, filed away for no reason, waiting for a moment nobody ever promised would come. That kind of memory has a name. Scientists call it episodic-like memory. And that small word, like, is doing something important, so stay with me. Episodic memory, in us, is the memory of living through a specific moment. Not the flat fact that Paris sits in France. The afternoon you were actually in Paris. The light, the ache in your feet, the person beside you. For a long time, the assumption was that only humans could do this. That an animal might learn a fact, but could never relive an event. What the Budapest work suggested is that a dog can hold on to an experience it was never asked to hold. A memory formed almost by accident, simply because it happened, and to someone that mattered. That is what episodic-like means. It does not mean your dog narrates their past the way you narrate yours. We cannot know that, and honest scientists do not pretend to. That is the whole reason they say episodic-like, and not episodic. but the door most people assumed was locked turns out to be open, at least a crack. And here is the tender part nobody warns you about. That memory fades. The dogs recalled the action more sharply after 1 minute than after 1 full hour. Time pulls at it, the same way it pulls at yours. But think about what survives that pull. Not the command you drilled 1,000 times. That is only learned, a fact filed under useful. What lingers is the lived thing, the event. You, on one specific evening, doing one specific small thing, for no reason at all. Which means the moments your dog keeps of you are not perfect recordings that last forever. They are held the way you hold the people you love, imperfectly and on purpose. So the question stops being, can they remember you at all? It becomes something better. Out of all of you, what do they choose to keep? And hey, if this makes sense to you, hit like and subscribe. It helps us reach more dog lovers who actually want to understand what their dog is really saying. So picture what a memory of you is actually made of. It is not a single photograph. Your dog is building you out of several senses at once, and the deepest layer of all is scent. At Emory University, the neuroscientist Gregory Berns trained dogs to lie perfectly still, awake and willing, inside an MRI scanner. Then he offered their noses 5 different smells, one at a time. A strange dog, a familiar dog from their own home, a person they had never met, their own scent, and you, a cloth carrying the smell of their own human. One of those scents lit up the reward center of the brain more than any other. Yours, not the dog they curl up with every night. You. And your scent did this while you were nowhere in the room. There was no face to greet, no hand holding a treat, nothing in front of them to react to. Just the trace of you on a scrap of cloth, reaching the part of the brain that quietly says, this one is good, this one is worth something. It was a small, careful study. A dozen dogs holding still inside a machine. So hold the finding gently, the way the scientists themselves do. But the direction it points is hard to miss. Here is what that means the next time you catch them doing it. When your dog presses their nose into the shirt you tossed on the bed, or settles down on the one sock that rolled under the couch, they are not smelling a smell. They are visiting you. The scent is a door, and behind it sits everything the smell is tied to. The safety, the food, the sound of your voice, 10,000 ordinary evenings. You are not a fragrance to them. You are a feeling, wearing the shape of a scent. Now watch what your dog does with all of that. They do not simply store you. They rebuild you. In Kyoto, a team of researchers ran a quietly brilliant test. They played a dog the sound of its owner's voice. Only the voice, through a speaker, calling the dog's name. And then, on a screen, they showed a face. Sometimes it was the owner's face. Sometimes it belonged to a stranger. And the dog stared longer when the face was wrong. Sit with why that is so strange. To be surprised by the wrong face, the dog had to already be expecting the right one. The voice alone had pulled up a picture. Your voice comes in through their ears, and somewhere behind their eyes, your face appears before they have laid eyes on anything at all. That is not a simple association. That is imagination aimed straight at you. And you have watched this happen without knowing what you were seeing. The head that lifts off the floor at a car that sounds like yours. Before the engine cuts, before a door even slams. The stare fixed on the front door at the exact hour you usually walk through it. Those are not empty little habits. That is your dog reaching into memory, pulling up a picture of you and holding it there, waiting to see if it comes true. It means your dog carries a version of you that does not switch off the second you leave the room. While you are at work, while you are asleep down the hall, while you are 100 miles away. You still exist inside them, fully formed, in detail. And here is the quiet weight of it. Your dog does not miss a blank space where you used to be. They miss a you they can still see. So let's set the two dogs side by side. There is a dog that responds to you, and there is the dog that remembers you. From the couch, they can look completely identical, but on the inside, they are not the same animal. The dog that only responds is running the loop. You appear, good things tend to follow, the body reacts. In theory, that dog would react the same way to anyone who reliably delivered the food and the walks. But the dog that remembers is doing something no reward could ever buy. It has kept the parts of you that never fed it once, the way you laugh at your own bad jokes. The morning you were sick and stayed in bed, they stayed pressed to your feet the whole time. The the specific weight of your hand on their head, which is not like any other hand on earth. The exact pitch of your voice saying their name when the house is empty and no one else is there to hear it. None of that was ever on the menu of rewards. None of it earned them a single thing. Conditioning asks one question: what does this person give me? Memory asks something else entirely. What happened with this person that I do not want to lose? Here is what that means for you tonight. Your dog was never trained to keep you. No treat taught it. No command shaped it. They keep you the way you keep the people who matter most. Not because it is useful, but because it is you. So, the one thing your dog will never forget about you. It was never a trick. It was never the treats in your pocket. It is not even your face on its own, because if the lights went out tonight, the scent of you and the sound of you would still walk you straight back into the room. The one thing is simpler than all of that, and much harder to say out loud. It is you. Not you as a source of food. Not you as the hand on the leash. You as an experience they lived through and quietly filed away, again and again, with no reason and no reward, until you were written into them for good. Think about the dog at the airport. Gone for 6 months, a year, longer. And the instant you round the corner, there is no confusion, no slow relearning of who you are. There is only a body that comes apart with joy, because the memory was never gone. It was waiting. It sat inside them through every empty morning and every quiet night you were away, unchanged, patient, yours. Think about the dog who finds you in a crowded park out of 100 moving legs and comes straight to yours. That dog is not solving a puzzle. That dog is remembering. Out of every scent and every shape in that whole park, one arrangement means home. And it is you. And here is where all of it lands. Every night you come home worn out and give them almost nothing. No long walk, no game, just your tired self dropping onto the couch. You are still, quietly, the most important thing that happened in their entire day. You are the memory they keep when nothing is asking them to keep it. Not for a treat, not for a walk, not for anything you could ever hand them across a counter, just because, one ordinary day, you were there, and something in them decided you were worth carrying. They hold the shape of you long after any single evening has come and gone. That is not obedience trained into them. That is not a habit worn smooth by repetition. That is you, remembered. And that is the one thing you will never have to earn again. So the one thing they can never lose is the one thing you never thought to give them. Just you, on an ordinary day. If this is the kind of question you like to sit with, subscribe and keep wondering with us. And tell us below, one ordinary moment you are sure your dog remembers about you. The next video might be yours.